Welcome everyone to today's interview. Today we have a very special guest, Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
For those who don't know your backstory, would you like to briefly introduce yourself for our audience here?
Yes, my name is Lester Pearson, and I'm the Prime Minister of Canada. I was Secretary of State for External Affairs in 1948. I headed the Canadian delegations from 1948 to 1956. I was President of the United Nations General Assembly in 1952 to 1953. I represented Canada at the founding of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in 1949, and in 1951 I was Chairman of that organization. In 1957, I received a Nobel Peace Prize for my acts for the Suez Crisis in 1956.
Your final point was a perfect transition to what we'll be talking about today. Today, I have some questions about the Suez Canal, peacekeepers, and what is happening in Cyprus. But first, can you please give a very brief explanation of what the Suez Crisis was?
The crisis began with the American and British deciding not to finance Egypt's construction of the Aswan High Dam as they promised. In response to these actions, the President of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, decided to seize control of the Suez Canal Company. He foresaw that collecting tolls from the canal would be able to pay off the dam within 5 years. The British and French were worried that closing the canal would cut off shipments of petroleum from the Persian Gulf to Western Europe. After diplomatic efforts failed, Britain and France secretly prepared their militaries for action. That's an overview of how the crisis began.
Why did you feel you had to take action at that time?
I felt like I had to take action when I did because I could foresee the downfall of NATO. This is because both Britain and France kept their military plans a secret from the United States, us, and other NATO allies. If the British and French attacked prematurely, NATO could have very easily fallen apart, and in the worst case scenario, another war could have broken out.
What was your solution to make sure NATO didn't fall apart, or worse, have another war start altogether?
I suggested creating a peacekeeping force to stabilize the situation and allow the attacking forces to withdraw from the battle. I offered up a battalion of Canadian troops, and they became known as the United Nations Emergency Force, UNEF, and they were monitoring ceasefire agreements. A peacekeeper's role was to maintain peace and security, protect human rights, and help restore the rule of law.
Amazing. Now, moving on. Why did the UN send Canadian peacekeepers to Cyprus in the first place?
The UN was asked to send peacekeepers to Cyprus to prevent the constant fighting between the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots. They were fighting because both the Greeks and the Turks wanted Cyprus to fall under their own country. The peacekeepers are there to aid in the restoration of law and order, and to promote a return to normal conditions.
What have peacekeepers done differently in Cyprus compared to Suez?
There's a huge difference between the Suez crisis and what is happening in Cyprus. In Suez, the conflict had only just begun, but in Cyprus there had been time for grudges to form. Also, the quarreling populations of Greeks and Turks were very intermingled. Maintaining the peace in a situation where many small groups of Turks living among the larger groups of Greeks, and vice versa, is very difficult. The solution to the problem was the establishment of a buffer zone stretching across Cyprus known as the Green Line. It is a ceasefire line, and it separates the portions of the island controlled by Greeks and Turks.
One final question. How long have Canadian peacekeepers been in Cyprus trying to settle the situation?
As of right now, the Canadian troops in Cyprus have been active for just over 3 years, but I do not see the conflict ending anytime soon.
Thank you for coming on the show today. I think that our listeners are now very well informed of what has happened in both Suez and now Cyprus. I also do believe that these moments will be very significant for years to come.
It was my pleasure to make an appearance today, and hopefully all your listeners feel a lot more informed about what is going on with Canada and the world right now.